Garage sale Saturday and Sunday, 8 to 4. Luke took a ride onto Wilderness Lane, passing the cardboard sign. They'll probably leave the damn thing there until it tears away and blows down the street, he thought. He came to a stop in front of a 2-story house. The driveway was lined with tables full of items. There was a couch and a dresser on the lawn. But Luke was only interested in smalls, things he could buy cheap and transport easily, to flip online. He didn't make tons of money doing it, but he liked the extra cash, and more importantly, he enjoyed the hunt. Luke made his way around the circular setup of tables, and already had a few items in his arm. A small skull ashtray, a back scratcher that he'd be keeping for himself, and a clay statue of a rhino. He was flipping through some records with his free hand, and noticed a black cylinder next to the box. Just then, the homeowner walked up and stood next to him.
"Find anything?"
The man asked. "Yeah, what do you want for these 3 in the Wish You Were Here vinyl?" Luke replied.
How about 15?
12, he quickly answered, looking him in the eye.
Deal.
The man reached out his hand and Luke shook it. "What is that?" Luke nodded at the black cylinder as he was paying him.
It's some cheap knockoff of the Amazon Echo, but instead of saying Alexa, you say Lizzie. You can just have it if you want it.
"I don't want you to do that. I'll give you $1 at least."
You know what? I can't take any money for it. My wife says the damn thing doesn't even work. It's all yours.
The homeowner wrapped the wire around it and tucked it into Luke's arm. "Awesome, man. Thanks. Good luck with the rest of your garage sale." Luke walked back to his truck, tossing his loot onto the passenger seat, and drove away. At around 8:30 that night, Luke finished a plate of spaghetti and cracked open a beer. There was a game on, but it was the Mavericks against the Hornets, and he didn't care about either team at all, so he figured he'd relax instead of watching TV. He grabbed the generic Echo, plugged it in, and plopped back down into the couch. "Lizzie," he shouted, and took a swig of beer. The black cylinder flashed a red light on its side twice, but there was no reply. "Lizzie," Luke tried again. Another 2 flashes, but nothing. Well, I guess that guy was right, he thought. He stood up and got his new record off the kitchen table. At least he could rock some Shine On You Crazy Diamond while he caught a buzz. As he walked back into the living room, Lizzie spoke to him, and what she said sent a shiver down his spine.
"Someone is coming to kill you tonight."
What the fuck? Is this some kind of joke? Luke stood in the archway trying to figure out how this was happening, and she spoke again.
"Did you hear me, Luke? Someone is coming to kill you."
He ran and dove at the electrical outlet, pulling the wall plug before she could finish, and sat on the floor with his back against the wall. What is going on here? Is this a walkie-talkie situation? Maybe the phrases are programmed into it, and a buddy was pranking him. After a few minutes, Luke plugged it back in.
17 minutes.
Lizzie said as soon as she had power. 17 minutes what? He shouted back.
"A man will be here. He will be trying to look into the living room window."
Luke stood and walked to the window. Pulling the curtain to the side, he looked up and down the street. He laughed at himself. This is fucking crazy. I get some gadget at a yard sale that talks, and now I'm like Alex fucking Jones, staring out the goddamn window looking for lizard people.
14 minutes, Luke.
So you know my name, big deal. Who is this? Mark? Bobby? You somehow must have known I would go to that garage sale. He didn't really believe that, but what else could it be? He knew it wasn't alive or conscious. It had to be some kind of trick. Lizzie, what is my full name? 2 red flashes.
Lucas Walter Easton, born to Beverly and Philip Easton.
Luke smiled. Impressive, but not mind-blowing. Tell me something that nobody knows about me.
When you were 13 years old, your cousin was getting beat up by a few bullies from the neighborhood, and instead of helping him, you ran away. 11 minutes.
He was dumbfounded. He never told anybody about that. He was so ashamed at his cowardice. His cousin still had scars from that beating. Luke couldn't deny that something supernatural was happening, but needed more proof. He took his half-empty warm beer and poured it into the sink. "Lizzie," he said, walking back into the living room, "I need you to tell me something that is impossible to know." He turned on the game. "Who will win the Dallas-Charlotte game?"
The Hornets win 106-99.
She replied. "Well, there's still an hour left. Can you tell me anything else?"
JJ Barea is about to tear his right ACL.
The game came back from commercial and Luke watched intently. He kept pushing fast forward to make sure that he was live. About a minute later, Barea was driving to the basket and stepped on another player's foot. He fell to the ground, writhing in pain, grasping his right knee. Luke's jaw almost hit the ground and he turned off the TV. He was ready to hear more of what Lizzie had to say. "So why's this guy gonna kill me?"
He's sick. He's done it several times already. He's going to cut your hands off.
"Jesus. And what do you suggest I do, Lizzie?" Luke asked as he sat back on the couch. 2 red flashes.
Defend yourself. Shoot him while you have the chance. If you don't, he will blindside you. This man is stronger and more evil than you can imagine.
Luke stared up at the ceiling, wondering if he was going insane. "I'm not going to fucking kill someone because an answering machine told me to."
7 minutes, Luke.
He got up and unplugged the black cylinder. This was getting out of control. He turned out all the lights and headed to his bedroom. He decided that maybe going to bed early was the best thing to do. He could have a fresh start tomorrow morning and figure out whether or not he was losing his mind. But as he lay there, all he could think about was Lizzie's warning. How many minutes would she be at now? How the hell could she know about the basketball injury? What if she's actually right? Luke jumped out of bed wearing only boxers and flung open his closet door. He reached up over the highest shelf and grabbed the shotgun his grandfather had given him, and then he got some shells from his underwear drawer. Just in case, he thought to himself. He went back into the living room, plugged Lizzie back in, and sat back down on the couch. "Lizzie." 2 red flashes.
Yes?
"Where is he?"
He's approaching right now.
She said. Sure enough, the silhouette of a man grew on the curtains, being backlit by the street lamp. The man had his hands on both sides of his eyes, trying to see through the curtains. Luke sat frozen, the loaded shotgun across his lap.
Shoot him. You won't get another chance.
Lizzie spoke in that emotionless cadence. Luke raised the shotgun and paused halfway. "I can't."
Shoot him, or die.
Glass exploded outward as Luke fired through the window. The man flew backwards a few feet and landed on his back. He was already dead by the time Luke walked outside. People in the neighborhood were coming out of their houses to see what was going on. Some started screaming, and others were most likely calling the police. Luke knelt down by the man. His chest was completely destroyed, but his face was unharmed. It was his neighbor, Mitch. Tears started pouring down Luke's face, and he couldn't catch his breath. Mitch was a friend and a great guy. They'd barbecue and drink beers together quite often. Luke heard the sirens in the distance. He stood up, went inside, and buried his head in his hands as guilt started to eat at him. When the police showed up, Luke told them everything that had happened. Of course, they didn't believe him, and he tried to get Lizzie to say something and prove it. However, all the black cylinder did was flash red. Lucas Easton was arrested for voluntary manslaughter and was given a 14-month sentence because while he claimed that his neighbor was going to be an intruder, he wasn't actually inside the house. The judge also ordered Luke to complete therapy sessions for his delusions involving the talking machine. The house next door that was owned by Mitchell Marlowe was transferred to his next of kin, his brother Steve. 6 months after the incident, Steve was living in the house with his family. His wife wanted to expand and update the kitchen. During the demolition, Steve found a secret compartment behind the stove, and in it was a large suitcase. Not having the combination, Steve pried at the corner with a crowbar until the lock popped open, flinging the contents all over the floor. Several vacuum-sealed bags of severed human hands. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. Come follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Corey Rhino. And as always, be good to animals, even people, even though they suck.
See ya. Ja, snämma, Bergsbus, Rish.
Hey Lizzie.
Hello, the Devil's Interval. How are you?
I'm doing good, honey.
Someone is coming to kill you tonight.
Oh, nice.